Thanks, Patrick. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on this beautiful Friday afternoon. We're really excited that this is the first in a series of conversations around transit-oriented development. And our local experts here in Shaker Heights will be presenting with us today. We at County Planning have been working very closely with GCRTA, the City of Shaker Heights, City of Cleveland, and the City of Fairview Park to work through some of the challenges that we're seeing around transit-oriented development and how our current zoning codes and communities may not support that type of development. So Patrick and the team here have been doing an immense amount of work to take a look at where things are, what we want to be, when we grow up, and how do we help support communities in the future for development that's along our priority transit corridors. So thank you again for joining us. There's more to come, so we really appreciate your time. And with that, I'll turn it over to Patrick. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mary. Just a couple quick items in terms of housekeeping. Please remain muted during the actual presentation. We're saving time at the end for Q&A. If you do have a question, comment, or conversation topic at the end, please use the reaction button and raise your hand, and we'll call on you to share your thoughts. Just a quick recognition of a number of folks on the call, not just the County Planning Commission. We've got Mary Beth Feek and folks from GCRTA who've been close partners throughout this process, as well as folks from the City of Cleveland, Shaker Heights, and Fairview Park, who have been meeting with us on a bi-weekly basis over the past year to get this project underway. So thank you to everybody for that. What we've been defining as TOD, we've been calling this based on the Federal Transit Administration's definition. Transit-oriented development includes a mix of commercial, residential, office, and entertainment centered around or located near a transit station. Dense, walkable, mixed-use development near transit attracts people and adds to vibrant, connected communities. This is a local example in Cleveland of Intro, which is a really kind of key type of development that we're interested in seeing more of. It includes proximity to transit, both bus and trains. It has a mix of uses, appropriate density, is close to the street, and has limited and appropriately placed parking. This is the type of development that we're talking about, and we want to learn a little bit more about what Shaker Heights today has been doing in this regard. Our goal for this project is to improve zoning and governmental policies to attract more TOD to key corridors in Cuyahoga County. We're not the first people to talk about this. GCRTA, NOACA, Cleveland, and others have been doing that, but we've identified that there are a number of missing items, including land use strategies, coordinated zoning, and incentives throughout the county. We're undertaking a zoning study with that partnership group that has 4 phases. The state of TOD is the first phase. That's where we are right now, where we want to talk about the importance of TOD. We're getting started in analyzing zoning of communities along the TOD corridors that we've identified. And as we go further, we're looking to create model TOD zoning that folks can adopt, as we also think about TOD financing strategies in the future. For updates on the project, you can go to countyplanning.us/TOD. And for an interactive overview of our first phase, you can go to countyplanning.us/TOD overview. With that, we are getting underway with a series of conversations where we want to learn both locally and in the Great Lakes region what some folks have been doing around TOD. Today is our first one, and we wanted to hear from Joyce and friends over at Shaker Heights. I will let her introduce everyone. We also have an additional series of presentations coming up from Minneapolis, Cleveland Heights, and Indianapolis. If you are interested in those conversations and haven't received the invite, please email me. We are very excited to hear from all of these different folks. And with that, Joyce, I will stop sharing and I will turn the show over to you.
Thank you, Patrick. I do want to introduce, I'm going to share my screen real quick. I do want to introduce our team. We have Luke Palmisano from Max Collaborative, Dan Feinstein, Senior Planner and Zoning Administrator, Mayor Weiss, I believe, is on the line, and Anna Mates, our planner. And so let me get this slideshow started. Okay, here we go. So many of you have heard me speak about Van Aken before. I see all my friends on the line. If you haven't, we are going to start at the beginning and take you through some of the zoning standards, which I don't speak about a lot, but it is the basis for what we do. So Shaker Heights is the original transit-oriented development. We have 2 rapid lines and of course, many bus lines. All homes are with about a quarter-mile walk to a transit station. And we were developed with the Garden City design. So why do transit-oriented development zoning? It's to ensure that we do have development that supports transit, that it ensures a mix of uses, ensures that there's walkable neighborhoods, and ensures there's density to support the transit. And what we always say is we do the planning first, and then we do the zoning to support that planning. So we're going to look at the Van Aken district, which is at the corner of Warrensville and Chagrin, as a case study. In 1950, this area already had transit. You can see in about the middle of the slide, right about here, this was the RTA end of the line, and it was a rail station, a rail yard. One shopping center was built, a strip shopping center, and the other one had not been built yet. By 2004, both these shopping centers had been thriving in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And by 2004, we saw a lot of vacancy. You can still see in the middle the RTA tracks, as well as a bus loop right there in the middle of the slide. So we do a lot of planning. It's been about 20 years. This is an old slide, but about 5 major plans, several minor plans, and 61 public meetings. So with all our plans, we make sure we get out and talk to our residents. So again, 5 plans in 16 years, and I'll go over each of these. And again, the importance of planning is the adopted plan is the basis for your zoning code, and your adopted plan sets your goals and policies, and really is your community vision, a collective community vision. And then the zoning is important because it takes that community visions and sets rules and regulations based on the plan and turns the plan into reality. So our first vision, our first modern day vision, because there were visions for this area since 1960 of how to improve it. In 2000, we did a strategic investment plan, and that was a citywide plan. But for the Van Aken district, it did call for a vision of a walkable mixed-use district, something with a central gathering place. It did call for an iconic transit station and connected to existing neighborhoods. We had great graphics, and you can see, on the right, a sketch, and this got the community really interested. We did not go back to Van Aken. We actually worked at Shakertown Center near City Hall for the next few years. And we got back to the Van Aken district in 2008. And our plan was called a transit-oriented development plan. And this plan was important because it called for reconfiguring the intersection. Many of you know Van Aken, Warrensville, Northfield. It used to be a terrible intersection in terms of traffic. So we closed Van Aken Boulevard in the middle of the site. We relocated Northfield to the south, and that allowed a 4-way intersection. This plan also showed 2 rapid stations. You can see them here on the slide in the red circles. The proposed intermodal station was to extend the rapid through the intersection to an intermodal station, and the current rapid station was proposed also to be a rapid station. In 2010, we supported RTA as they did a transit center and RTA Blue Line study. We did the transit center together, and RTA did the Blue Line study, and that was looking at extending the Blue Line out to 480 and 271. We also did an economic development plan in 2010, looking at, if we had development, how do we brand the city as a place to live and work instead of just live? And how do we diversify the tax base? So we looked at likely market segments. In 2016, we looked at a Van Aken Connections plan, and this was all about bike, pedestrian, and transit connectivity. And from this plan, we did build multimodal paths on Farnsley and Warrensville, and we are planning for the Van Aken path now. And you can see the nodes in the red circles, and the RTA station is one of those nodes that we were looking to connect to. And during the pandemic, during lockdown, we did a Van Aken public realm vision study. And this was in reaction to and in working with RTA. They were planning and are still planning a track improvement and a new comfort station at the end of the line. And we wanted to work on the public realm to help connect the transit station better to the development areas. So as I mentioned, we do a lot of public meetings. This was a public meeting for the TOD plan in 2008. This was during a snowstorm, and we had 100 people come. So you see a lot of people with scarves and coats because it was snowing pretty hard that night. But our residents do tell us what they think. We invite them to tell us what we think. You can see the tables have pens and maps. And it was during one of these sessions that that for the Van Aken district, we decided the rapid station should stay where it was, that it didn't really need to move, and there wasn't a great place to move it to. So this came from one of the residents, that idea. So I mentioned the intersection. We have 45,000 cars a day. We had 6 legs coming in. It was confusing and congested and unsafe, many accidents, first in our city, number 11 in the county. And we did call this the 2 latte intersection. As you can see, there's a Starbucks that used to be in the middle, and you could wait at any of these lights for 3 minutes before you could go. And you could not make left turns. So we used to joke that people could jump out of their car and get a latte and come back, and the light would not have changed yet. So we did a traffic study, or maybe 2, to evaluate the roadway operations. And we did look at the future conditions of improved operations by taking this to a 4-way intersection. And that is what we did. So this was a huge city investment in infrastructure to support future TOD development. So we spent a little under $19 million, but we raised $19 million for this from 7 funding sources, because it is often the city that needs to step in and do infrastructure improvements prior to a development. So this is a photo from 2004 that you can see on the right side of the screen, the 6-way intersection. And this is in 2016 up at the top. You can see the change to the standard 4-way intersection. And this also allowed pedestrians to cross. Prior to this, there was red signals to cross, but they weren't long enough. So there were many people who had to run across the street. And you can see it also created a busway, if you can see my cursor. So the buses now pull into a busway adjacent to the rapid transit. And so that really improved connectivity for bus to rapid transfers. The connections plan did result in streetscape and multi-purpose path improvements and other bicycle infrastructure and other pedestrian improvements. This is a photo of the Warrensville multi-purpose path, which is walking and cycling. We then followed up on the Van Aken district public realm plan with an engineering plan, which we're doing right now. This will be a $1.8 million investment in a plaza right across from the RTA comfort station. So the new comfort station is up here near the top of the slide, and the blue areas are public plazas that the city is going to be installing in early 2024 to improve the connectivity to the district, which is north of here and south of here, and to improve the waiting environment for RTA riders. And this is just a view of the RTA comfort station that RTA is now in engineering for, and we hope it is constructed in 2024. So the zoning code supports transit-oriented development. And in Shaker, the way we mostly do this is through the commercial mixed-use district. And the commercial mixed-use district has your usual type of regulations: height, setback, parking, permitted uses, conditional uses, and site plan review. But the purpose statement, which I'm going to read a little bit of, is really important. And the purpose statement sets the tone for the district and also directs anyone looking at the code or the zoning administrator how to interpret the code to support TOD. So the purpose of our district says to encourage a compact mix of uses, reflect the human scale, and emphasize pedestrian orientation, take advantage of the convenience provided by multimodal transportation options, and the vitality that mixed uses can bring to the community. And then further, it says it's to create development around key transit stops and create dense walkable mixed use center, employment opportunities, improve the pedestrian environment, take advantage of the benefits of transit, including the value that transit services add to adjacent and surrounding real estate, and increase the physical and cultural prominence of transit in the community. So our code is very clear why we're doing this, and it really helps support the regulations. We have two commercial mixed use zone districts in Shaker. One is the Van Aken district here. This happens to be the height map. And you can see it's CM in the middle, and it is surrounded by office and also single family. And the Chagrin-Lee district is the other district that we have that is also zoned commercial mixed use. So the CM district permitted uses include retail, housing, restaurant, and service uses. And it does not allow things like automotive or drive-throughs by right. A conditional use is a drive-through, and we do have one drive-through in the Van Aken district that is at a fast food restaurant. That's a Wendy's. And we have a pickup window that's coming in for a Chipotle. But other conditional uses are brew pubs and wine bars, as well as daycare facilities. And this is a rendering of a building south of the Van Aken main district that is being renovated for both a brew pub and a restaurant. In terms of parking, we do have a 60% reduction in parking requirements for transit-oriented development. And we also have a maximum of parking. So you cannot build more than 100% of your required parking. And in this case, we have been giving 60% reductions for anything in the greater Van Aken district. And we've also included parking for bicycle as a requirement. In terms of height, we have a 70-foot maximum height in the Van Aken districts and a minimum of 2 stories. This code is for new development as well as existing areas. So we've had, like say a Rite Aid come in, and they were one of the first buildings built under this new district. And it has what we call the appearance of 2 stories. So it's a very tall 1 story that looks like 2 stories because you have to understand that in a built up area, your code, you can't just do it for new development. You have to figure out how does existing development and other infill development work with it. Setback, we have a minimum 5-foot setback and a maximum 10-foot. So we are forcing the buildings at the street. And this is an aerial of the Van Aken district and Tuttle Road and a mixed use building that you can see is very close to the street. We have had to give a number of variances, small variances to that setback, because for a tall building, sometimes 10 feet is just really too close to the street. We also have large lot development, and this is where I was saying, infill small lots versus a large lot. And so we have a special section that deals with mixed uses being required in large lot developments. It requires active first floor uses, and including that active first floor uses require clear windows facing the street. We also require that 50% of the first floor building frontage be active. Dad, can you take this slide for me? Nope.
As soon as I can unmute myself, I can, of course. So within the commercial mixed use district, we have design principles. So this is Shaker's attempt, and our zoning gets into design principles with building and site design, fenestration, so your windows, like we mentioned, where your entry is, so your entry faces the street, required, what materials you can't use. We don't allow like vinyl siding and some of those type of materials. We have pedestrian access and circulation requirements. streetscape improvement requirements, and then your parking lot design and location. So this is where Shaker Heights really tries to move some form-based code into our zoning ordinance.
Great, thank you. And I will say that this takes up 4 pages of our code. So these are pretty significant. We also updated these standards in 2013 to get ready for the private development. And we added bike parking standards, sustainability guidelines, and the requirement that parking structures be aligned with active uses facing the street. So we also have site plan review standards, and this is for our entire code for any new development or any new building. And this is where we look at the site layout and the street pattern. And in this case, it was very helpful to have this type of review because what's labeled as Mead Road on here, but it's really called Tuttle now, originally was not connecting both main streets. Originally, it started at Farnsley, but ended in the middle of the site. And through our site plan review discussions, it was decided that it would be best to connect to Chagrin. We also require traffic studies as part of this, and that is helpful to map the traffic and see if there's any traffic improvements. And we also look at landscaping through this section. We also, as everyone on this code, has a city planning commission, board of zoning appeals. Shaker also has a very strong architectural board of review that approves all exterior changes on all sides of the building and all details. In this case, we created a city planning commission working group because the Van Aken district was a large project. And so the working group spent the time looking at all the details, the nitty gritty, having those conversations, and they made recommendations to the planning commission. So by the time it got to planning commission, a lot of the details were already worked out. Density is also something that our zoning code requires. And this is what density is needed for successful TOD, mostly because it supports transit, it supports your retail, your restaurants, services, as well as office uses. So this plan shows the main district in the middle. We'll talk a little bit about phase 2, which is under construction now to the top. Another private development at the right of the slide and future developments to the south. But density is an important topic. So mixed use development, I talked about planning, I talked about zoning. There's also other things that you need in Cleveland to get mixed use development going. Public-private partnerships, the use of tax incentives, be it TIF or negotiated tax abatement, incentives such as loans and forgivable grants to businesses. Many communities use design guidelines, and when we hear from Cleveland Heights in a couple of weeks, you'll hear about how they've done that, as well as joint meetings between your boards. There are other efforts that we've done to help enhance this, and this is, I mentioned infrastructure investment, $19 million in the intersection. We've also done a lot of sewer work. We've spent a little over $1 million on sewers in this district. First, for phase 1, we tied a sewer just east of the property into the sewer district deep tunnel so that there be room in our old sewers for all the water. And we've also replaced a culvert under phase 2, again, to make way for the development. The city has done streetscape work, bike facilities, public art. We have a piece of public art being designed right now, $75,000 for the new public realm that I showed you. And then other continuous improvements, the Van Aken bikeway plan that we're underway now, and this will be for a bikeway that is from the Van Aken district to Lee Road to connect major bike facilities, improving the public realm, and of course, working with RTA, our partner, on the comfort station. There's other policy considerations. I mentioned TIF and tax abatement and incentives, also working with our regional partners to encourage investment. This has been a very important part of getting this done, working with RTA and the county and NOACA and the state. We also are successful because of political will and political support. This can't be done unless your mayor or mayors, in this case, 4 mayors, I think, worked on this project. And council support this, both with their political will as well as their money. And we have resident support, and resident support is built through inviting the residents in at the planning level to tell us what they think and give us their ideas, and then listening to what the residents want. And that's very important. So this has resulted in Van Aken District Phase 1, the mixed use development, and Phase 2, which is an apartment building. And I am going to turn it over to Luke Palmisano, who'll tell you more about the private development.
Thanks, Joyce. Yeah, hi, everyone. I'm going to leave my video off because my internet connection isn't great right now. As Joyce mentioned, my name is Luke Palmisano. I was the chief developer of the Van Aken District for the Ratner family. At the time, my position was president of RMS Real Estate, which was the
Luke, you're breaking up a little bit.
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. Forest City was a nearly 100-year-old company when it was sold in 2018, founded by the Ratners, many of whom live in Shaker Heights. So this project was in their backyard. And the old strip center was developed by Albert Ratner in the 50s. It was one of his first real estate projects. So a lot of history. I, at the time, was started working on the reorientation of this intersection, the Chagrin-Warrensville intersection, and demonstrating their commitment to having a great commercial place in the city of Shaker Heights, which is 95% residential homes. It encouraged us to spend a lot more time working on the possibilities for the land that
Luke, you're still breaking up. I don't know if there's anything you can do to improve that.
Yeah, if you give me a minute, I could call in.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Is that okay with you, Patrick?
Yeah, absolutely. If that gets a clearer connection, that'd be great.
Yeah, and while Luke is calling in, I can talk a little bit about what this development is. It is on the left side, a mixed-use development building with office above retail. And there's a parking garage of which you can see the top of here in the center. This is lined on 3 sides. We could not get the 4th side line, mostly because the site wasn't large enough to do that. On the right side of the slide is a mixed-use 5-story residential building with retail below on the 1st floor, Mitchell's building in the middle, and a 2-story restaurant building and retail building in the foreground. Patrick, will you let me know when Luke comes back in?
Yeah, we do. I did just admit a 216 number, so I'm hoping that is Luke. Luke, was that you?
Okay, well, I'm going to keep going so we don't waste any time here.
I'm gonna see if I'm gonna actually ask to unmute and see.
And see if that's him. Okay.
Luke, is that you? Okay, I don't think that's working right now. If you want to continue, Joyce.
Okay, I'll just keep going. I'll tell him to tell me when he's in. Okay, we'll just keep going. So I'm going to tell you about the developers' challenges. So this is a photo of the shopping center right before it was torn down. And it did have some vacancies. Of course, there was competition, as we all have, to, further out east in terms of the retail landscaping that was changing. There was a market perception that this was, kind of a rundown area. And there was aging infrastructure, and it was difficult to access the location, which we talked about the building. But it was a low growth market, and we've made some growth. In terms of community engagement, this is a photo of some Friday night, what do they call them, Dan? Beer markets or something like that. And this was actually in the parking lot where the green space is now. And this showed that hundreds of Shaker residents were looking to gather somewhere. And this happened for about 2 years prior to the construction taking place. And so it was shown that, people were interested, that there were strong connections to the adjacent communities, and that they felt, RMS felt there was ability to create something here. Luke, do you want to try?
Yeah, I'm in on my phone, but I can't unmute.
Okay.
Luke,
Is there
is the last number 713 or 080?
080?
Okay, I'm going to ask to unmute and let me know if that works for you. There you go. That should work, Luke.
Okay.
Perfect.
Can you
Thank
hear
you.
me?
Yes, we can
Wow.
hear you. I just
How
went
many
over
years
this
have we
slide
into this,
briefly.
Zoom thing, and I still can't figure it out. You were doing a great job, Joyce.
Okay, so I kind of finished this
so what
slide. I
I
don't
was
know if there's
saying
something
is-
else you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, challenges were, this was an old 50s era strip center in a part of town where the street grid was a mess, and people avoided this intersection like the plague. So with the city's reorientation of the intersection, it made this a lot more appealing. I was mentioning earlier, I'm not sure if you all heard me, that the flexibility of the zoning in this district was very appealing for us. The city's commitment to making this area a great place, it meant that we could have a good public partner in this, and that absolutely turned out to be true. We have at Forest City, there was a strong history of doing very large urban mixed-use transit-oriented developments across the country. That was what Forest City was known for. Projects like the Yards in DC, or Hudson Yards in Brooklyn, or Stapleton, which is about the size of Shaker Heights, which Forest City master planned and built out. It's still being built out, but this is a period of 20 years. Massive projects in Los Angeles and San Francisco, and the list goes on and on. What was interesting about Van Aken is that it was an opportunity for us to take what we've learned in other large projects and bring it down to a smaller scale in our backyard. The idea of creating a main street, something that could be connected to the community, and as Joyce went through the street grid, that was intentional. It was creating multiple ingress and egress points like you would have in any other urban fabric. We didn't want this to feel like you've arrived at some private developer's lifestyle center. We were trying to be anti-mall with this project. Having this be adjacent to transit was very important for us because it helped us make the district feel more urban, again, feel more connected to the community. Which, by the way, our new venture after the sale of Forest City it's called the Max Collaborative. We are doing development across the country, particularly Denver, Los Angeles, and Shaker Heights. We have about $750 million of project value into the ground under construction right now, and it's all transit adjacent. We're big believers in the benefits of transit, particularly, we're long-term owners, and it's just going to become more important over the next 10, 20 years. What's working today for us is the result of many intentional decisions that the city and RMS made together. Again, we talked about the street grid. We talked about density. That was very important for placemaking. Early on, we focused on site control. So we owned the original Van Aken Shopping Center. The city owned a couple lots adjacent to us. We then bought Shaker Plaza. And between Shaker and RMS, we controlled 18 acres in this district. We felt that that was more than enough to create a great place. We started with phase 1, which is on 5 acres. And the whole point of phase 1 was to start to change the area to create a place that people wanted to gather. In order to do that, we incorporated density. We incorporated a mixture of uses. We have public space. So we have a half-acre park in the middle of the project with Mitchell's Ice Cream in the middle of that park. We created a market hall, which I can get into in a minute. And we created a master plan for the whole district to ensure that what we did in phase 1 would encourage future phase development, not prevent it. So this first phase is 103 apartments, 64,000 square feet of office, about 100,000 square feet of retail, and I've forgotten the amount of parking, but it's not overparked. The idea was that if we need more parking, we could build it into future phases. We didn't want to overbuild parking for this first phase. One of the heart and soul of the project is the market hall. This was a way for us to bring in best of local tenants because we did all of the common area build outs. We created the bathrooms, the stalls. All the tenant has to do is build their infrastructure within their 100 to 400 square foot stall and pay us a percentage of sales. It's a simple 2-page lease. And we wanted it to be a place where you can gather throughout the day. It's not a place where you go eat lunch and leave. You can, but it's not like a food hall in other markets where they're dense and you don't have any places to sit. This is the community's gathering spot, and that's certainly panned out. It looks like this only a few times a year. Most of the year, it's more casual. This was for an event. But you have people having coffee meetings or working on their laptop, having lunch. They're there with their families. Every time you go there, you end up running into someone you know, which is what this district is all about. From the next slide here. The public space was very important. We spent a lot of time focusing on the size of the park. We wanted it to be big enough to do events and have large gatherings, but also small enough that it didn't feel empty when it was just a normal Tuesday afternoon. So I think if you're planning public space into a project, it's important to get the size right. It's important to get and this is part of the zoning that Joyce talked about, but getting the scale of the streets and the sidewalks right to make it feel comfortable for the pedestrians that are walking through the project. On-street parking helps a lot in that pedestrian atmosphere. What's on our next slide here, Dan?
Which slide do you want, Luke? Do you want one for the next phase, or do you want a site
Perfect.
plan?
Yeah, this is perfect. So we completed phase 1 in 2018 and into 2019. We started to stabilize towards the end of 2019, and then COVID hit. And we have restabilized last year and into this year, and the district's in a great place. The apartments are in incredibly high demand. Usually we like to keep our apartment buildings at around 95% occupancy. We can't do that. We're always at 98, 99% occupancy. And that's because people want to live here because of the amenity is the district itself. We don't have a lot of amenities in this phase 1 apartment building, but you can walk out your door and go to a great restaurant, hop on the train, head downtown, be there in 26 minutes. You could, it's a great place to walk your dog or just be with your family. That has encouraged us to build phase 2, which is a 18 and 14-story tower with bridges that connect the two. Those bridges are not hallways, they're actual units that have views of both the golf course and the city and the lake and the Van Aken district, so you can see on both sides. It's a concrete structure in 227 units. These will be some of the nicest apartments in Northeast Ohio. And we're very bullish about it because of how well phase one is doing. And if we had these units today, I'm sure they'd be leased up very quickly. This will deliver in about 22 months. It's under construction right now. And again, it's the result of what the city and RMS intended in the first phase to encourage future phase development. This is because of Van Aken phase one and the place that we've created. There's other developers now doing work in the district, which is what we wanted, what we encouraged. And there's the opportunity for much more south of the market hall. So there's a 2-acre parcel, which we're focusing on office development, again, to facilitate the mixture of uses, the mixture of people throughout the district at different times of the day. And then Shaker Plaza could get redeveloped at some point as well. Then in the middle of all that, you could see the train, along with the bus transfers there.
Great.
Anything else, Joyce?
No, I think that's good. I think we can open it up to questions. I'm going to stop sharing. And then I don't know, Patrick, if you want to.
Yeah, thank you, all of you. Thank you, Joyce, Stan, Luke, for that wonderful presentation.